Hi, this is Brandy Shantz, and you're listening to Living Chronic. Today I'm speaking with Suzanne Garwood. She is the mom of two disabled kids, and currently she's up for the Best Buddies Champion of the Year, DC and Virginia Award. So, welcome, Suzanne.
Hi, thanks for having me. So exciting.
So, I love having these kinds of conversations because, living chronic can mean so many different things to different people. There are many chronic disorders, disabilities, and there's a pretty big range, capabilities, different phases of your life. You have two disabled children, and because of that, you've been a strong advocate for the disability community for many years now. Could you tell me a little bit about your involvement with Best Buddies?
Sure. Yeah. So, and thanks for the platform. It's always so important, I think, to
Mhm.
raise awareness and have these kinds of conversations. So yes, I'm the mom to two kids. Both have Down syndrome. My daughter also has autism. She's nonverbal. So you're exactly correct that there's such a wide spectrum of how having a disability impacts your life. So obviously Down syndrome is genetic. So, both my kids have been this way their whole lives.
Mhm.
It's one of those things, I think people ask, like, what's it like? Or, how did you think about the challenges? And part of being a mom, that was just,
Mhm.
who our family is. So it's not as though I made any conscious choices. That's just who they are. Um, in terms of Best Buddies, so Best Buddies is a national organization, and it is really exactly as the name suggests. It is a program for kids in middle schools, high schools, even colleges who are teamed up with neurotypical children to be their buddies, to partner with them through their school, do all kinds of activities. It's really the best way for kids to integrate, to be part of their community. Important it is for kids to have peers to do things with. I mean, obviously, my kids can do things with me, or they can do things with their dad, but that's never going to substitute for having someone who is your own age, who's your peer, to have something to do.
Mhm.
That's a little bit about me and my kids, a little bit about Best Buddies. In terms of the champion, this is pretty exciting. I'm pretty overwhelmed, but we're figuring it out. So the Champion of the Year is an event that Best Buddies is putting on here in Washington, D.C. It's going to be in November at the Ronald Reagan Building, and it's two parties for one common goal. It's a party, sort of a prom gala for the kids to hang out with their buddies and have a good time and dress up and dance to music. But it's also, a fundraiser and an event for the adults. All the things that we do at, fundraisers. And best of all, Connor, that's my son's name. So Connor and Sloan are my kids. We're going to get to walk on a runway as champions. So
Oh,
very excited.
model. They're models for Best Buddies.
Models, yes, that's it.
That's really wonderful. Um, so, and of course, full disclosure, I know you very well. We're friends. So I get to see a lot of this great work on Facebook every day in your life. And you're also a big advocate and fundraiser. You do really great fundraising for the National Down Syndrome
I
Society.
I know. I honestly, I feel so bad for my friends. It's like every year I'm like, I'm gonna take a break. I'm not gonna fundraise for everything. And then something else pops up and I'm like, oh, well, here I am again. But yes. National Down Syndrome Society, NDSS, has long been one of my favorite nonprofits to do work for. They're also mission driven to help kids, adults with Down syndrome. They do it in a little bit of a different way. Not less or more, but different. So, they're much more of an advocacy, organization. They're up on the Hill, and they are, advocating for legislation that will help make, our kids' lives better. Um, a couple of examples, and you know, folks I think don't, if you're not part of the community where you have disabilities, you don't kind of understand all of the challenges.
Right.
So a couple of the laws that they are, attempting to get passed, would help for, two folks who have disabilities who rely on Social Security for their income, because
Mhm.
often have truly full-time jobs, is to actually have them help them get married. And you folks, I think of marriage equality, they think of gay or other kinds of relationships, but it's factually difficult, legally difficult for two people with disabilities to get married if they have SSI as their
Right.
primary source of income, because of how the laws are stated, where you can only have so much of income, you can only have $2,000 in assets. I mean, you think about $2,000, like,
Right.
I mean, that's, where does that go in Northern Virginia? Like nowhere. So it's legislation like that folks don't know is so important until you hear the circumstances, and then you think, my gosh, how is this not already part of the fabric of our law? So NDSS is doing extremely important work up on the Hill, and trying to make lives better for folks with Down syndrome.
And, we've had a few conversations about this too. When you're sitting from the outside, I think often people think, oh, who's trying to go on disability? Are they just trying not to work? You know, or there's this fallacy out there that it's just easy, even among medical professionals. My own doctor said, oh, just apply for disability if you can't get to work. Well, that's not really how it works, doc. Um, and the truth is, most of us, whether you are, severely disabled, like your daughter Sloan, who has Down syndrome and autism, nonverbal, or if you're just, somebody, like myself, who has Crohn's disease and just needs a big accommodation because you can't get to an office or travel or do these other things. Wherever you are in that big spectrum, we mostly just want to be like everybody else, right? We
Yeah.
want to get married. We want to go to work. I like
Yes.
work. I don't want to sit around all day long and think about my disability. Nobody wants to. And there are a lot of obstacles put in the way, that make it difficult to really live your life. And I think it's often because people don't see that perspective. You,
Exactly.
of course, have a perspective like very few others because you do have two children who are disabled who want to live these normal lives. And you, even as an attorney, a very successful attorney, have been trying to navigate this world of Social Security
It is.
ability. It's just not as easy as they think.
No, no, it is so difficult and time consuming. Fortunately, my husband is able to work from home, so we're definitely fortunate in that. And I was at work just this Friday, like literally, 2 days ago or yesterday. I can tell time. And he was texting me while I was at work, and he was going through the time he spent on hold with SSI, because we both, both my kids are now 18. When you turn 18, we have to apply for guardianships. We have to go through a court. We have to file reports on a routinized basis with the courts, showing that we are guardians and the need for the kids to have a guardian. You have to apply for SSI because that's the time when you have to apply for it. And he was on the phone for 2 hours trying to get our daughter Sloan enrolled into the program. And that's not counting the time that he's trying to get, approval for my son to have a very, very small part-time job, at a wonderful, retailer here in Northern Virginia, who has made it her, mission to hire folks with disabilities into her stores. So the amount of time that he's spending on the phone, just trying to file paperwork is astronomical. So if people think that, this is easy, like, you need to do the myth busting on that. It is extremely difficult. And you're right, it's not something that anyone wants. Connor loves to be out. He loves to be with his friends. He loves to be in the community. Like, he wants to do productive things with his life. And we do need a society and a set of laws that will support him doing that. So, yeah, we still have a lot of work to do. And part of it is myth busting. And, part of it's trying to change the laws that we live under.
Yeah, because they are rather difficult, even just to live your life. Like you said, you know, once you have certain disabilities, you just don't have that full capability to live like everybody else. You just need some help. And in this, very successful and wealthy nation, just giving somebody a little help up, but without having to strip them of their dignity and make sure that they're living in poverty or can't get married. And I
Exactly.
think that's what's most important. Give the disabled their dignity, right?
Yes. Yeah. So much about the conversation needs to be about the dignity of folks who, aren't looking for handouts. They're looking, I guess, the phrase of they're looking for a hand up, or just some assistance, or just, you know, it's not that they want an extremely easy life. They just want those obstacles that are put in front of them to not be obstacles, to do just the basic things like have a job or to get married. I have to say, one of the things that just goes straight through me is when I hear folks say, "Oh, those are entitlement programs." Like, that's the
Yeah.
most disparaging thing. And you're like, it's not entitlement. It's just people who have different needs than others have different needs, and some of them just need, a little bit of help. So yeah, it just some words just go straight through me.
No, I understand it. And, it does take that perspective. It does take that perspective. We all mostly live our lives looking at life from a certain perspective, and it's very easy to not see the other side until
Yeah.
you're there. And it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you really don't appreciate it because you don't understand it. You really only understand the things that you experience.
mhm,
And, to be honest, like, I'm sure that I wouldn't have, the views that I have, or, the feelings I do towards the importance of advocacy and myth busting, if I didn't have this lived experience with children who have disabilities. And, if this wasn't my life, I'm sure I would have an entirely different life. And
right.
that's why, things like your podcast are so important, because people who don't have this lived experience can, hear from us and hear, like, oh, well, that's what it's, like, from a different perspective. So it's very important.
Absolutely. And there are different perspectives even within this life. My
Oh,
perspective, of course, is as somebody who's living with my disabilities and have gone through my own struggles. But I know my husband, Steve, and you as caregivers have a different perspective, even because often when you are the disabled one, we don't have the ability even to advocate for ourselves.
mhm.
I just did an episode where we talked about all of the legal documents, right? you know?
Oh,
And
man.
I know you've probably got all of them. Thank goodness there's 2 attorneys in your house. I've had to learn a lot on the fly, What if, one of these times I'm in the hospital and there's certain decisions that need to be made. I've had to do that, have that difficult conversation. Steve, this is what needs to happen next. Here's the documents. This is what we do. You're making this decision for me. And that's a lot about what your guardianship is about, right?
Yes, yes. You're really forced to face those things you don't necessarily want to think about. You're forced to face them really early on. I would say, my husband and I have been married for 25 years, and my son's 20. So, I think when we got married, maybe we had a will. I don't know. Back then, you're so young.
Oh,
You're never going to get old. You're never going to die. Nothing's going to happen.
mhm.
None of that. But then after we had Connor, who obviously had Down syndrome, we went straight to a financial planner, straight to the attorney, because we had to set up trusts. You have to set up special needs trust. And again, it comes back down to the income, to the SSI. You have to make sure that you prepare the lives for your kids in a way that most other parents don't have to think about. And a lot of that is all of these legalities of
Mhm.
how do you hold property so that it is most accessible and protected, from government sort of interference. And you have to make sure that you have family or friends or somebody in your life who you can trust to take care of, to be the trustee of your kids, sort of after you're gone. So yes, it's you grow up really quick. You have all of those sort of adult things that you put off to the side when you're young and foolish, I guess.
Just not thinking, even at my age, I talk to people all the time who find out, oh, you have a living will. Well,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yes.
things go wrong real fast. So you do have to have those very difficult conversations
Hmm.
and, put together a lot of paperwork. I
Hmm.
know, it's interesting. I've gotten a lot of questions recently about guardianships because of the blind side
I
fiasco,
know.
if you will. And, people ask me, well, do you know anything about these guardianships? And I said, honestly, no, but I do know they're very difficult. You don't just walk in.
It is. So that's what's so fascinating about that case. And obviously, like, I'm not privy to the details. I get whatever I get on, whatever social media wants to tell me details
Mhm.
about other people's lives. But it's fascinating to me because I can't figure out like how it happened. And certainly every state's different.
Yes.
But, even when you went to get guardianships over our kids, which you have to do when they turn
Mhm.
18, because you literally can't do anything. Like, I can't make a doctor's appointment unless I have guardianship papers. Like, it's to that level.
Mhm.
So, and I was thinking to myself, like, how did this ever happen? We had to get a lawyer, we had to go to a court. The judge, had to read through every line of why it's appropriate. We had doctors, reports. You sort of everything was checked off, and I keep thinking like, how did this get past a judge?
Right.
It's just,
Right.
and they had a conservatorship, which is like, I don't even have a conservatorship because that's like more difficult to get than a guardianship because it's their financial well-being. And I keep thinking like, wow, that was some messed up stuff going on in Tennessee. So yeah,
It's the celebrity world. Sometimes they do so great at advocacy and getting word out, and I've seen so many great people out there. Christina Applegate's doing just
yeah,
great work, and Selma Blair, and all these folks. But
yes,
then you have these things that happen, and people think, oh, so you just walk in and get a conservatorship.
no,
And, you know, that's
yeah,
not it at all. And I don't even think, most people even know that you have to get a guardianship or a conservatorship for your own children at
yes,
some point when they need that kind of care when they're
yes,
disabled.
yes, yeah. The second they turn 18, and you think about it, you do everything online nowadays, so you're always putting in birth dates. So the systems know, like, oh, 18,
Fair.
like parents can't do that for you anymore. And you're like, no, really, I can't. So yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. Some of these things are so fascinating.
Yes, yes, because it's not like for the rest of us. And that leads me to my next question: cost.
Ugh.
You know,
Sorry.
I talk about money a lot because it's difficult. It costs a lot of money. You know, um, we know each other. We live in the same area. We're in the DC metro area. Tons of people, lots of money. The homes get bigger. The cars get more expensive. You know, um, but those of us with a certain, you know, disability, I hoard money like a world champion, but it's
Yeah.
because of the cost of things. And I understand that I'm very lucky. So when you're going through this and you have disabled children and you need to do the conservatorship or the guardianship, getting, together that disability, making sure they get the right education, for people who maybe don't live the same kind of lifestyle we do. What is the burden of this on cost?
It's hard for me to think about how folks who, are not as fortunate as
Mm.
Chase and I, Chase is my husband's name, how they do it. I can't, like, it's difficult for me to imagine. And you're right. So, even like you have to get a guardianship, even the simple act of doing that, I spent tens of thousands of dollars, each time in attorney's fees, just to get that accomplished. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. And
It
it's something
really,
we're legally required to do.
yeah, right. Even something that you have to do by law, costs you tens of thousands of dollars to do. Setting up the trust to keep them safe, making sure you have folks who will take care of them if you're not here. The amount of money and effort it takes to, help protect or aid someone, who's not as fortunate, who will not have the income streams that, that we're fortunate enough to have. It's mind-boggling. And a lot of times, you read stories about poverty and how it's, it's generational, and
Hmm.
you can understand it. It is so hard to sort of dig out of that like negative hole if you don't have homes, that are passed down, and that's your wealth generation. Like, think about folks who've just been renters their whole lives, from generation to generation. And it is mind-boggling. And it really, I think, it's been said that it costs so much money in this country to be poor. And that is so 100% true. You think about, folks who live on their credit cards. If you're late on a credit card monthly payment, let's say you and I just forgot one month, our automatic payments didn't go through or something, and it could cost you $40,
Yes.
in late fees. And those are people who are, depending on, sort of credit to
Just
just pay their bills. So yes, it costs so much to be, at the poverty level, income wise, in this country, that, folks like me who are a parent, you have to set the table for your kids well in advance. Yeah, that's definitely it, again, one of those things that folks don't necessarily talk about.
right. So, and then, we both do a lot of the same things. You're fundraising for NDSS. I'm fundraising for Crohn's Colitis Foundation. I've got another charity I like to do stuff for. But a lot of that is where that money goes to help, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
when somebody is legally required to set up this guardianship for their children and they can't afford it. And those are some of those programs that, maybe you think that the only thing this money goes towards is just propping up a charity, or, just one, like for Crohn's colitis, everybody thinks, oh, it's just for the cure. No, it's
No,
for that
living.
person who just can't live without that kind of help.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which begs the next question, are there any government programs to help people with this?
To help people with just life in general.
You,
So,
you're a caregiver, you've got children who need to go into the guardianship or need to go into a special program for education. What kind of, resources
yeah.
do
Yeah, so there's lots of programs, and I would say, so there's definitely government programs, resources that you can go to, but also, like you said, a lot of the charities, the
mm,
nonprofits, are the ones that are able to target the resources. So I'll answer that in a couple of different ways. So Virginia's pretty good, about their sort of Medicaid system. So when you are part of the Medicaid system, they have opportunities for even caregivers, to take advantage of programs like respite care. So there are the programs out there that are supported by, sort of government, usually state government funds. It's not really so much on the federal level. A lot of it, because Medicaid is really, obviously it's a federal program, but it's implemented at the state level. So there's a lot of state choices about how to spend that money. So there are programs there that can help support you to find resources. But like you said, sort of these nonprofits sometimes can be a little bit more agile because they know their populations much better, right?
Yes.
When you're Medicaid at the Virginia level, you're helping everybody. You're helping, folks with chronic illnesses or drug abuse. Like it's really sort of
Yes.
everybody. But if your best buddies, for example, they have programs to help, kids like Connor who are going to age out of the education system in 2 years, like find housing to live in a home that, will have, I'm sure, someone there to make sure folks are safe. But you get to live a little bit independently. Best Buddies also supports employment programs. So they help partner with folks like Jake's Ice Cream or Jake's Popcorn,
Mhm.
where Connor works, to get that ability to work in your neighborhoods. So I think it's really this, it's the combination of both. Your state government has to be strong in supporting those programs, and also, find your people because your people will help you.
People.
They know what you need, and they'll be out there to help you.
That's the most important thing I think I've learned. When I'm lost, I know call the Crohn's Colitis Foundation
Yeah.
because they've probably got a doctor who can help, a program, a charity source, and it can happen to everybody. It's happened to me at one point. I wasn't able to get my medication, and at $10,000 a month, I was looking at having to pay a lot of money just to get one medication. And a charity came through and gave me medications for free until I could get my regular insurance set back up. So it's amazing the kind of help
Yeah.
these people can give. So I always say, that's what I learned the hard way.
Yeah. But, our insurance process in the United States probably also needs a little bit of work.
Terrible.
A
It's
little bit of
terrible.
work.
Look, we've got some great bills that are, I always tell people, maybe you don't like government, maybe you hate politicians. That's fine. They're not the most likable people in the world. But get familiar with how to look up bills that are being brought on the floor because it's
Yes.
really important. It affects our lives in a very big way. And there are some great bills up there. You talked a lot about, you know, changing Social Security so
Mm.
that the disabled can have their dignity. The Safe Step Act is in front of Congress right now. We're trying to get people to vote on that. It's important because it means that we can get our medication. That was the problem I ran into.
Mm.
And the insurance can't try to throw you back to a cheaper medication.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, and of course, I publish all of these on my website for people who decide, yes, I want to get into a little bit of advocacy.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
need a lot of work.
We need a whole lot of work. We need a Congress that can, look across the aisle and stack hands. I
Yes.
think a great example of that is back, in the Obama administration. And, really folks were not agreeing on a whole lot during the Obama
No,
administration.
no.
Um, but one of the bills that passed and it became law, and it was because of, parents of kids with Down syndrome in Northern Virginia. They were the ones who came up with the idea and pushed it. They passed a law that created ABLE accounts. And ABLE accounts are accounts for folks with disabilities to hold money, not unlike like 529 plans.
Right.
So, folks that like, my kids are not going to be going to college, but we can put money into the ABLE accounts in a sort of a similar, tax manner,
Mhm.
so that kids with disabilities can have access to accounts, and it's not being touched by the SSI. So look, Congress can do it if they really just put their mind to it.
It can be done. Call your congressman. We have bipartisan things in this world.
That's right.
It's true. Yeah, and that's the one thing that gives me hope is, you know, most of the bills that I've gotten involved with are bipartisan. Everybody can agree.
Has to.
Disabled need more help. We need better health care. We need an ability to have our dignity. All of these things can be very bipartisan. So getting involved really makes a difference. And that ABLE account's a really great example.
It is. It is. We need more wins. We'll keep working.
We need more wins. That's really great. Yes, that you are correct. So, just lastly, what would be the most important piece of advice you would give to a caregiver who's saying, what do I do next? How do I best take care of my disabled wife, husband, child, mother, father?
I would say take care of you.
Mm,
It is so important, like self love, self care. Maybe you think, oh, I can't take any time for myself. Take time for yourself because you can't give to others if your well is completely dry. Steve will take care of himself to take care of you for sure.
yeah, that's really good advice. Well,
Mhm.
thank you for being here with me,
Thank you.
Suzanne. This has been great. And I really love that everybody got to learn more about Best Buddies. Again, you're up for this big, Best Buddies Champion of the Year, DC and Virginia. So that's a big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's like I said, so important. And I appreciate you thinking about me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, audience. You've been listening to Living Chronic.